Jamal had endured many things in his life, but nothing quite like the endless grind in the United States. As a Ghanaian immigrant and former convict, he had struggled to make ends meet, finding work only at a fast food joint, under a boss who treated him worse than dirt. The greasy smell of frying oil clung to his clothes, and the dull hum of the kitchen's ventilation system was a constant reminder of his reality. It was a far cry from the life he'd imagined when he first set foot on American soil. He had hoped for a fresh start, a new chapter, maybe even a slice of the American dream. But dreams were distant, and reality was harsh. On this particular day, his boss, Tony, was relentless. From morning till night, Tony seemed to have made it his personal mission to criticize, demean, and humiliate Jamal at every turn. His voice, sharp and condescending, echoed over the constant beeping of the deep fryer. Finally, after one particularly biting remark, Jamal felt a snap inside him. He clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and with all the frustration he had bottled up for years, he exploded. "I've had enough of this nonsense," he yelled, throwing down his grease-stained apron. Tony stood in stunned silence, his mouth slightly open as if forming a response. But Jamal didn't care. For the first time in a long while, he felt a strange sense of freedom as he stormed out of the restaurant. Outside, the cool evening air hit him, but his mind was still hot with rage. He lit a cigarette, the small orange glow flickering against the darkness, trying to calm himself. But as the smoke swirled around him, so did his thoughts, and soon panic crept in. What had he done? His stomach churned with anxiety. He was an ex-convict, his record already an anchor weighing down his chances of finding decent work. This job had been barely enough to cover his rent, bills, and basic needs. But it was something. Now, without it, he was staring at a long, dark road ahead. He was on the edge of a full-blown panic attack when he heard a familiar accent beside him. "Ah, brother, are you okay?" Startled, Jamal turned to see a smiling face with a thick Nigerian accent. The man introduced himself as Tobi and had a calm, warm presence, wearing a colorful dashiki that contrasted with the dim street lights. "I'm a regular at that place," Tobi said, nodding toward the restaurant. "I've seen the way the owner treats you. That wasn't right." They talked for a while, leaning against a lamppost, the city bustling around them. To Jamal's surprise, Tobi didn't judge him. Instead, he offered comforting words and a meal from a nearby stall. The scent of grilled suya and spices filled the air as they sat on a bench, sharing stories. They met a few more times over the next few weeks, Tobi occasionally treating him to food and making him laugh with stories from back home. Slowly, Jamal's spirits began to lift. One evening, Tobi invited Jamal over to his place to play soccer on his five. Jamal accepted, grateful to finally have a friend in the lonely city. As they arrived, Jamal's eyes widened at the sight before him, a beautiful house, large and elegant, with a driveway that stretched like a runway. The garden was immaculate, with neatly trimmed hedges and a fountain in the center. "Tobi, you live here?" Jamal asked. Baffled, yes," Tobi chuckled. The house was richly decorated with African artwork, gold accented furniture, and a faint scent of incense lingering in the air. It was clear that Tobi had wealth, yet he was humble, choosing to eat at the fast food joint and interact with people of all walks of life. Finally, Jamal's curiosity got the better of him. Tobi, forgive me, but why do you eat at that place? You could have anything you want, Jamal asked, looking around in awe. Tobi smiled knowingly. It's not about where I eat or what I have, Jamal. It's about the people I meet and the connections I make. I was once like you, struggling and fighting to survive. Back then, someone helped me when I was down, a kind stranger who gave me an opportunity. He told Jamal about a place called the Gold Cave in Nigeria, a place so rich with gold that it would take many trucks to carry it. But it was haunted by a serpent demon that prevented the gold in the cave from being harvested, and the few who tried never returned. No permits were needed, and if you ventured inside and managed to come out with any gold, you could keep it. Jamal listened intently, skepticism flickering in his eyes. A cave full of gold. A serpent demon? That sounds like a fairy tale, Jamal said, rubbing his chin. Tobi chuckled. I thought so too. But there are tales from my ancestors, stories passed down through generations. There are maps and legends. People have tried to find it. Some say the serpent guards the gold fiercely, but those who manage to outsmart it, well, they become rich beyond their wildest dreams. Despite his doubts, something about the story tugged at Jamal's curiosity. Later that evening, as he sat on the train heading home, Tobi's words replayed in his mind. The rhythmic clatter of the train tracks only heightened his thoughts. Was there really a place like that? As the train rocked gently, he pulled out his phone and began to search. With each tap on the screen, his skepticism began to fade. Articles about the gold cave popped up, detailing its legendary riches and the dark tales surrounding it. Some spoke of expeditions that had ended in tragedy, while others recounted the few who had returned clutching small fortunes. A sense of thrill coursed through him. This wasn't just a story, it was a possibility. From that moment on, Jamal couldn't shake the idea. What if he could escape his struggles? What if he could find this cave and claim some of that wealth for himself? The thought consumed him, becoming an obsession. He began to map out a plan, researching everything he could about the gold cave and the region around it. Days turned into weeks, and as he forged a friendship with Tobi, he shared his growing excitement. Tobi noticed the spark in Jamal's eyes, urging him to be cautious. It's not just a treasure hunt, Jamal. Many have been lost to their greed. But if you're determined, I can help. Tobi shared tips on preparing for the journey, how to navigate the terrain, what supplies to bring, and how to face the supernatural stories with respect. You must go with an open mind, but also with wisdom. There are ways to appease the spirits of the land, and I can teach you. As the days went by, Jamal saved up what little money he could, cutting back on expenses and planning every detail. He even learned to cook some traditional Nigerian meals, hoping to blend in once he arrived. Tobi was supportive, often reminding him to keep his feet grounded. Finally, the day arrived. With a heavy backpack filled with essentials, water, food, a flashlight, and a map he had drawn from his research, Jamal boarded a plane to Nigeria, his heart racing with anticipation and fear. As the plane descended, he could see the lush landscapes of his ancestors, a place that felt both familiar and foreign. Upon landing, he felt an energy he had never experienced before. He met Tobi at a local cafe, where they plotted their route to the cave over cups of rich, spiced Nigerian coffee. The aroma filled the air as they traced their fingers over the tattered map spread between them, marking paths and possible obstacles. Toby seemed excited yet cautious, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. Remember, Jamal, this is not just about the gold. It's about what you're willing to confront, both outside and within. The next morning, they set off at dawn, hiking through dense forests and rocky paths, following the map they had pieced together. The thick canopy overhead filtered the morning sun into streaks of golden light, casting eerie shadows on the moss-covered ground. Jamal felt a thrill with every step, the crunch of leaves beneath his boots, a reminder of the journey ahead. As they approached the rumored location of the cave, the air grew thick with anticipation. When they finally stood before the mouth of the gold cave, a dark, gaping hole in the earth, a chill ran down Jamal's spine. The entrance was ominous, overgrown with vines and shadowed by towering trees. The distant sound of water dripping echoed from within, giving the cavern a sense of foreboding. Toby placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, his grip firm. "This is it. Are you ready?" Jamal nodded, a mix of fear and determination swirling within him. Together, they ventured inside, armed with flashlights and a sense of purpose. The cave had very narrow tunnels, the air cool and damp, echoing their footsteps as they crouched and navigated their way through the dark. Strange markings lined the walls, ancient symbols that seemed to shift under the flickering light. Their torchlight beams began to reflect on something shiny. Excitement surged through Jamal as he realized they were close. When they got nearer, his breath caught in his throat. There it was, a wall full of golden statues made of pure gold, glimmering in the dim light like the dreams he'd held onto for so long. The carvings on the statues depicted warriors and kings of old, their expressions stoic and knowing, as if warning the intruders of their fate. In that moment of triumph, as Jamal rushed to gather the gold coins scattered on the floor, he noticed Tobi had sneaked away. "Tobi," he called, but there was no response. A strange feeling crept over him, and when he turned back, a chill ran down his spine. For there, coiled against the cavern wall, was a massive anaconda, its scales glistening ominously in the flickering light. The creature's eyes were fixed on him, angry and hungry. Panic surged through Jamal, and he felt his heart race as he tried to back away. "Please, Tobi!" he shouted, desperation in his voice. "What's happening?" But Tobi was nowhere to be found. Instead, he was kneeling, bowing face down before the anaconda, as if in a dark pact. "I have returned again with another sacrifice, as promised," Tobi said, his voice steady yet eerily calm. Jamal's blood ran cold as realization dawned on him. He had been nothing but a pawn in Tobi's game. The pieces fell into place. Tobi knew the danger, and he had lured Jamal here for his own purposes. "No, Tobi, please don't do this," Jamal pleaded, his voice cracking with betrayal. But Tobi only smiled, a glimmer of triumph in his eyes. The anaconda moved closer, its massive body undulating as it approached. The cavern's walls seemed to close in around Jamal, the shadows deepening. He had soiled himself in fear, and the stench wafted into the air. The anaconda paused, its nostrils flaring, its tongue flicking out to taste the air. "You brought me a sacrifice that has soiled itself and is no longer suitable for me to eat," the serpent hissed, its voice deep and rumbling like thunder. Before Jamal could react, the anaconda lunged. Tobi's smile faded as the creature wrapped itself around him, its powerful coils crushing him instantly. A sickening crunch echoed through the cave, followed by a guttural scream that cut off abruptly. Jamal could only watch in horror as the anaconda consumed Tobi whole, its eyes fixed on him, now a mere spectator in a nightmare. The weight of what had just happened crushed Jamal's spirit. He had trusted Tobi, believed in their shared dream of wealth and freedom, only to be betrayed and left at the mercy of a demon of the cave. In that moment of despair, as the reality of his situation sank in, he felt a flicker of resolve spark within him. He couldn't let fear dictate his fate. The anaconda, sensing his terror, approached him slowly, ready to feast on his panic. Thinking quickly, Jamal grabbed the gold coins he had managed to collect and held them out, trembling. "You want a sacrifice? Take this, I offer you this gold. A gift from your cave," he shouted, his voice trembling but firm. The anaconda paused, its eyes narrowing. "You think gold means anything to me?" it hissed, the tone mocking. "It is a soul that I crave, not mere trinkets." The serpent continued, its voice echoing ominously in the cavern. "I can only feast on the souls of those who are truly desperate and frustrated, those who have lost all hope. Bring me such a soul, and I will allow you to leave with your life. For every soul you bring, I will grant you more gold than you can carry." Jamal's heart raced as he processed the serpent's words. A part of him screamed in protest, recognizing the darkness of the bargain being struck. Yet another part, the part that had been drowning in despair and burdened by the weight of his past, felt a flicker of hope. He needed money to start anew, to escape the shadows that haunted him. "I promise," he said, the words tumbling out before he could think them through. "I will bring you a soul. Just let me go." The anaconda's expression softened slightly, as if contemplating the terms. "Very well, human. Pack as much gold as you can carry." With a sense of urgency, Jamal hurriedly filled his bag and Tobi's bag with gold, the coins clinking together as he stuffed them inside. The serpent watched him with its piercing eyes, seeming to take pleasure in Jamal's desperation as he struggled under the weight of the treasure. As he dragged the heavy bags of gold toward the cave's entrance, he summoned the courage to ask the serpent one last question. "What if I don't come back? Will there be any implications?" The anaconda's response was chilling. "Oh, I have no doubt you will be back for more when you run out of money," it hissed, the tone dripping with condescension. "I know that the only people brave, or perhaps stupid, enough to come here are the desperate. When they get what they want, they always say they will never return. But because their minds are not wired to keep money, they squander it and find themselves back at the door, seeking more gold." Jamal managed to make his way out of the cave, a backpack heavy with gold weighing him down, but lifting his spirits. The thrill of newfound wealth coursed through his veins. As he sold the gold, his life transformed almost overnight. He became extremely wealthy, indulging in lavish parties, expensive cars, and extravagant homes. Friends flocked to him, drawn by the glow of his success. And for a while, he felt invincible. The story of Jamal serves as a powerful lesson about the dangers of greed, desperation, and misplaced trust. It reminds us that shortcuts to wealth often come with hidden costs and not everyone who offers help has good intentions. In the end, the true test is not how much gold we can gather, but whether we lose ourselves in the pursuit of it. Thank you for watching my channel. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to check out more thrilling and thought-provoking videos. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting content. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, my dear, Mama Dyke said, her voice cold and sharp, and now you've seen far too much. Zara tightened her grip on the talisman, her eyes locked on Mama Dyke. You won't win, she said, her voice trembling but defiant. The stormy night was loud and wild, with the wind crashing against the windows of Mama Dyke's big fancy mansion. Thunder rumbled in the distance, shaking the ground with its deep growl. Rain lashed against the glass panes like desperate fingers trying to claw their way inside. Zara's heart was racing, beating faster with every step she took. The flashlight in her hand shook as she walked quietly through the dark hallways, her breathing quick and shallow. The scent of aged wood and burning candles filled the air, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Earlier, she overheard the servants talking about a hidden room, a mysterious place where Mama Dyke kept her most valuable secrets. Zara couldn't stop herself. Zara couldn't stop herself. She had to know what was inside. The long hallway seemed to stretch forever, but soon she reached the huge wooden door at the very end. Her chest felt tight. Her hands cold as the air around her seemed heavy, almost as if the house itself was warning her to turn back. The flickering candlelight from the sconces on the walls cast long, dancing shadows that made the hallway feel even more sinister. The door wasn't completely closed. It was open, just a little, enough for her to see a soft, flickering glow from a candle inside. Zara held her breath. This was it, the moment of truth. She gripped the flashlight tightly, took one deep breath, and carefully pushed the door open, the old wood creaking softly under her touch. Zara stepped into the secret room, her eyes growing wide with shock. The walls were covered in strange ancient symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Rows of shelves held bottles filled with mysterious potions, shimmering mirrors, and strange talismans that gave off an eerie energy. The air smelled of dried herbs and something metallic, almost like blood. But at the center of the room, her attention was drawn to a large black mirror. It pulsed gently, almost as if it was alive, sending chills down her spine. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, growing louder and faster. Zara's stomach tightened with fear. She turned, but before she could find a place to hide, the door slammed shut behind her with a force that made the candles flicker violently. Standing in the doorway was Mama Dyke. Her face wore an unsettling, eerie smile that sent shivers through Zara. Her robes billowed slightly, as if unseen forces moved around her. So, Mama Dyke said in a voice that was cold and sharp like ice, "You thought you could outsmart me." Zara tried to speak, but her voice refused to come. Her throat felt dry, and her hands shook as she gripped the flashlight tighter, as if it could somehow shield her from the growing tension in the room. The air seemed to hum with unseen energy, making the tiny hairs on her arms stand on end. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, my dear. Mama Dyke continued, her words slow and deliberate as she stepped closer. And now you've seen far too much. Before Zara could react, Mama Dyke clapped her hands, and the black mirror flared with a blinding glow. Dark shadows rose from the floor like smoke, swirling rapidly around her. The shadows wrapped tightly around her wrists and ankles, dragging her to the ground, dragging her to the ground. Their touch was ice cold, sending shock waves of fear through her body. Zara screamed for help, but the raging storm outside swallowed her cries. "You'll stay here until I decide what to do with you," Mama Dyke said, her voice cold and filled with menace. Her eyes glinted with satisfaction as she clapped her hands again. The shadows pulled Zara into the corner of the room, forming an invisible barrier that trapped her completely. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, and faint whispers echoed around her like ghosts speaking from another realm. "Enjoy your stay," Mama Dyke sneered, her mocking laugh echoing through the room. She turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. The heavy sound of the door closing left Zara in silence, alone and imprisoned in the eerie, shadow-filled room. In her small, cozy apartment, Lammy sat by the window, staring at the pouring rain. Her phone lay silent beside her. Zara hadn't answered her calls all day, and Lammy's worry grew heavier with each passing minute. The dim glow of a single lamp cast long shadows across the walls, adding to the unease settling in her chest. "She said she was going to that church again," Lammy muttered, her voice filled with concern. Her instincts screamed that something was wrong. She glanced at the clock. It was far too late for Zara to still be out. Without wasting another second, she grabbed her umbrella and stepped into the raging storm, determined to find her friend. The cold rain pelted her face as she hurried down the street, her heart pounding with fear. Back in the secret room, Zara sat on the cold, hard floor, tears rolling down her cheeks. Her fists pounded against the walls as she screamed for help, but the howling wind outside drowned out her cries. Around her, the shadows moved and whispered faintly, their voices eerie and distant, like echoes from another world. The dim candlelight flickered uncertainly, casting eerie shapes that danced across the walls. Then something caught her attention. The black mirror at the center of the room began to shimmer and shift. Images appeared on its dark surface, moving like a sinister movie. Zara's heart sank as she saw Lammy walking through the storm, her umbrella barely shielding her from the downpour. Lammy was heading straight toward the church. "No, Lammy, don't come here," Zara screamed, her voice desperate, but the magical barrier kept her cries locked inside the room. The images on the mirror changed. Zara gasped in terror as she saw Mama Dyke standing by the church's main altar, her expression cold and cruel, a wicked smile playing on her lips. The candlelight flickered eerily around her, casting unnatural shadows on the stone walls. Lammy reached the church, soaked to the skin from the relentless rain. The massive wooden doors groaned loudly as she pushed them open, their ancient hinges protesting with a deep echoing creak. Inside, the grand hall was unsettlingly silent, the dim light casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. The scent of damp wood and burning incense lingered in the air, making her shiver. "Zara!" Lammy called out, her voice trembling as it echoed through the empty space. "Are you here?" From the dark corners of the hall, Mama Dyke stepped forward, her figure looming, and her presence both commanding and deeply sinister. Her silk robes trailed along the cold floor, whispering against the stone. "Welcome, child," Mama Dyke said, her tone warm and inviting, but her eyes gleamed with something dangerous, something malicious. "Are you searching for someone?" Lammy froze, her instincts warning her to turn and run, but she swallowed her fear and stood her ground. The thick candle smoke curled in the air, making it harder to breathe. "I'm looking for my friend, Zara," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. "She didn't come home." Mama Dyke's lips curled into a wider smile. The flickering flames reflected in her dark eyes, making them glint like polished obsidian. "Ah, yes, Zara," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. "Such a curious girl. She's resting now." Lammy clenched her fists. "Where is she?" she demanded, trying to hide the fear in her voice. Mama Dyke tilted her head, her expression calm but menacing. Her long fingers traced the edge of a silver chalice resting on the nearby altar. "Patience, child," she said softly. "Let me show you something first." In the shadowy secret room, Zara's eyes were locked on the black mirror, which revealed every moment unfolding in the church. She pounded on the invisible barrier with all her strength, her cries desperate. The room around her hummed with dark energy, the symbols on the walls pulsing faintly with each frantic movement. "Lammy, don't do it! It's a trap!" she shouted, but the magical confinement swallowed her words. In the main hall, Mama Dyke's calm and sinister demeanor didn't waver as she led Lammy down a dim corridor to a small enclosed room. The air grew colder with every step, and Lammy could hear the distant drip of water somewhere deep within the stone walls. "Your friend is just inside," Mama Dyke said, her voice smooth and convincing. Lammy stepped cautiously into the room, but it was empty. The only object inside was a strange, glowing mirror, its light pulsing softly and casting eerie reflections on the walls. A faint hum resonated from it, vibrating through the floor beneath her feet. "Look into it," Mama Dyke urged, her tone dripping with subtle menace. Lammy froze, her instincts screaming that something was horribly wrong. She glanced back at Mama Dyke, then at the glowing mirror. The pull of curiosity mixed with fear made her steps falter as she approached. The mirror's glow intensified, casting twisting shadows that danced across the walls. Back in the secret room, Zara screamed louder, tears streaming down her face. The air around her crackled as the talisman in her grip grew warmer. "Lammy, don't look. It's a trap." Her voice, though filled with panic, could not break through the magical silence. But Lammy couldn't hear her. Just as Lammy leaned forward, the mirror pulsed with dark energy, and a shadowy hand reached out, grabbing her wrist. Its touch was icy, sending sharp pain through her arm. Lammy screamed, trying to pull away, but the mirror's grip was too strong. The force pulled at her, dragging her closer to its eerie depths. Zara, watching helplessly, felt a surge of anger and determination. She searched the room she was trapped in, looking for anything that could help. Her eyes landed on a small glowing talisman on one of the shelves. The intricate carvings on it shimmered with a golden hue, radiating a faint warmth. "I have to try." Zara stretched as far as she could. The talisman burned her hand as she grabbed it, but she didn't let go. The moment she did, the barrier around her shattered, and she was free. The air rippled around her as if the magic itself recoiled from her defiance. Zara burst out of the secret room and ran toward the main hall. As she approached, she saw Lami being pulled further into the mirror. The dark energy swirled violently around her friend, drawing her deeper. "Let her go!" Zara shouted, holding up the talisman. Mama Dyke turned, her eyes blazing with fury. The dark aura around her seemed to flicker and pulse in reaction to the talisman's power. "You shouldn't have escaped," she hissed, her hands clenched into fists, and the room trembled slightly. The two women stared each other down, the air crackling with tension. The storm outside raged even harder, wind rattling the stained glass windows. Zara knew she was outmatched, but she refused to back down. Would she be able to save Lami, or had she walked into an even greater danger? The story of Zara and Lami teaches us a valuable lesson. Curiosity can be a double-edged sword. While seeking the truth is important, ignoring warnings and stepping into danger unprepared can have dire consequences. Always trust your instincts and be cautious of those who hide behind kindness with ill intentions. Thank you for watching my channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more thrilling and exciting videos. Once upon a time, there lived a very proud and arrogant man whose name was Adan. He was so handsome that he believed that his handsomeness could get him any woman of his choice. Adan often gazed at his reflection in the mirror, marveling at his chiseled features and flawless skin. He slept with so many women and kept several relationships at the time, with no regard for the feelings of these women. Adan was known as a serial heartbreaker who played with the emotions of countless women, leaving behind a trail of broken hearts. Adan reveled in the power he held over these women, finding satisfaction in their tears and desperation. The women he left behind often warned others about him, but Adan's charm and good looks made it difficult for his next targets to resist. Kayo was one woman who had been with him for over 10 years. Adan had promised to marry her someday. He even went ahead to introduce himself to her family, providing assurances to her that one day she would be his wife. Ona, believing his every word, chased away all the men who came to ask for her hand in marriage. She remained single, hoping to be married to Adan. But what she did not know was that Adan had no plans of ever marrying her. He had made up his mind to marry a virgin woman, of which Ayo was not. In Adan's mind, Ayo was just a woman to pass the time with, someone who served his needs without deserving the commitment he falsely promised. For Adan, the idea of settling down with Ona was laughable. Despite all her loyalty, sacrifices, and the years she had invested in him, he believed that marrying a virgin would guarantee her loyalty, purity, and devotion, values he lacked but deeply craved in a partner. What Adan did not know was that life was about to take a dramatic turn. One day, Adan announced to his friends that he was ready to get married. His friends, who were accustomed to his reckless ways, laughed in disbelief, but Adan was dead serious. He began searching for a wife, a virgin woman who was untouched and innocent, a woman who would be worthy of his name and status in society. Adan was so sure of what he wanted. He could not risk ending up with a woman who was like himself. The phobia of being deceived or betrayed by a woman who shared his own unfaithful tendencies consumed him greatly, and Adan was not willing to endure such a life. He decided to pivot on his current lifestyle, hoping to find his perfect bride. He cut off all communications with the women in his life, including Ayo, blocking her calls and avoiding her family. Adan began to attend church services, believing that he could find virgins in church. He even joined the workforce in church and became actively involved in church activities, hoping to make a good impression. Among those who noticed him was Ola, a quiet, kind hearted woman known for her modesty and strong faith in God. Ola was everything Aden had been looking for in a woman. She was a renowned virgin who was not only beautiful but virtuous and deeply rooted in the things of the spirit. Adon set his sight on her and began to pursue her with the same determination he had once used to chase his countless women. However, Ola was not easily swayed. She had heard of Adon's reputation and was skeptical of his sudden transformation. Aden, on seeing her skepticism, put on the performance of his life. He portrayed himself as a changed man, deeply in love with God and determined to build a future with a woman like her. He joined the church prayer group and spent 21 days praying on a mountain. During this time, he fasted so often that he began to lose so much weight. His determination to win Ola over became the talk of the entire church, and many admired his supposed transformation. However, Aden struggled with his past life. He began to secretly visit his numerous women at night, whilst maintaining his image as a reformed man during the day. He was so confident in his ability to deceive everyone, not knowing that life had other plans for him. One evening, after a prayer meeting, Ola accepted his marriage proposal. Adan was so excited that he could barely contain his joy. He saw her acceptance as a victory, proof that he could outsmart everyone and have the perfect life that he always wanted, with a virgin wife who would remain loyal to him whilst he continued to live a double life. Ayo heard of the proposal and was so devastated. She had given Aden 10 years of her life, only to find out from others that he was engaged to another woman, a woman he had paraded as virtuous and worthy whilst treating her like a disposable commodity. The betrayal cut deep, and the humiliation of being discarded so easily was unbearable for her. Determined to get answers, Ayo called Aden repeatedly and realized that he had blocked her number. She sent messages which all went unanswered. So one day, she decided to confront him directly at his home. When Aden saw her at his doorstep, he sighed in frustration but allowed her inside. Ayo, trembling with anger and heartbreak, asked, "Why, Aden, after everything we've been through, why would you do this to me? You promised to marry me. You even introduced yourself to my family." Aden, cold and dismissive, leaned back on his couch and smirked. In his tone, dripping with arrogance, he said, "Let's be honest. You were never wife material. You were convenient, that's all. Someone I could have fun with while I figure out my life." Ayo gasped, her eyes filled with tears. "After 10 years, after everything I gave up for you, I chased away good men because I believed in your lies." Aden shrugged nonchalantly. "That's your problem. You made your choices. I never put a gun to your head. Look, I need a wife who is pure, someone I can trust to give me loyal children. You don't fit the criteria. It's that simple." Ayo stared at him in disbelief. His words were like daggers, cutting deeper than she thought possible. "You think you're better than me? That you deserve purity when you've been with countless women? You're a hypocrite." Aden chuckled. "Call me whatever you like. At the end of the day, I'm the one getting married to a woman who meets my standards. And you, well, you're just a chapter I've closed." Ayo stood there shaking with rage. She wanted to scream, to hit him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he had caused her. But instead she walked out, her heart heavy and her spirits broken. As the wedding day approached, Adan was on top of the world. He had everything he wanted: a beautiful, virtuous bride, the admiration of the church, and a spotless reputation. But what he did not realize was that his past was about to catch up with him. The wedding day finally